Keeper of the Lost Cities, Everblaze, Chapter 32. Sophie stared at the glittering tower built from brick-sized amethysts. That isn't what I was expecting. She'd been to the jeweled city of Eternalia several times over the last year, though never to this section, far from the tree-lined river, where the lone tower stood surrounded by a silver fence. But the shimmering purple walls and diamond-shaped windows made it look like it should house a princess with ridiculously long hair, not an insane pyromaniac elf. And it definitely didn't match the name Oblivimir. Do not let the beauty deceive you, Tyrgen warned, his long, heavy cloak, identical to Sophie's, swishing noisily along the crystal path. This tower is from a different time, back before the ancient treaties were signed, when we needed to make an example. He whispered the last word, like it was too horrible to say any louder. I thought the elves hated violence. Yes, but violence isn't the only way to instill fear. She decided to take him at his word, following him silently to the locked silver gate. Thin strands of tinsel were draped over the fence like webs, and when they drew closer, Sophie could see tiny prickles and barbs hidden among the sparkles. A thunderous clang shattered the silence, and the gates whipped open, revealing a dark courtyard filled with leafless trees. A chill seemed to hang in the air as they entered, and after a few steps, even Tyrgen started to shiver. Sophie pulled her cape tighter as the gate slatched behind them with a groan. "Where is everyone?" Sophie asked, searching in the shadows for signs of life. "Waiting for us inside." He offered her his hand, and Sophie gratefully took it, happy to feel some tiny hint of warmth. "At least there's no angry mob protesting the healing," she said, trying to stay positive. "Yes, it appears at least some secrets can be kept." "So, do you think that means the leak of information isn't coming from the council?" she asked, remembering her theories on Bronte. "I hope so, though I'd almost prefer that to the alternative." "What's the alternative?" He glanced around like he was afraid someone might be listening. "I shouldn't be distracting you with unnecessary worries." "Yes, you should." She locked her knees when he tried to pull her forward, earning herself a sigh as he leaned closer and whispered, "All right, fine. I can think of a race of creatures that are far better at eavesdropping. Can't you?" It took Sophie a minute to piece out what he meant. "The missing dwarves?" "What do you mean, missing?" Now it was Sophie's turn to glance over her shoulder. "I guess 13 dwarves are missing. Grady's been looking for them, but so far he hasn't found any clue to where they might be." "You're certain?" Sophie nodded, not liking the way his grip was tightening on her hand. "But the dwarves are on our side, right?" "As a whole, yes. But as you well know, that does not mean there can't be deviants among the group. And the dwarves might be small and squinty, and rather mole-like, but Sophie had seen them crack the earth with a single well-placed step. "So what do we do?" she whispered, half expecting 30 dwarves to break out of the ground and attack. "Nothing right now, except to shove this far, far out of your mind and rally your full consciousness. Let us not forget we're here for something much more crucial." "Right," Sophie agreed, squaring her shoulders as she followed Tyrgen through the narrow silver door into the tower. Once inside, Sophie could see fissures marring each brick, glistening purple veins that made the jewels look ready to shatter. 2 glowing chains hung from the ceiling to the floor, providing the only light. Otherwise, the room was round and bare and cold. Beyond cold. Their breath practically crystallized in the air, and Sophie pulled her hood over her head, grateful the fabric was so thick. "I thought you said the others were here," she said between chattering teeth, searching for a door or a flight of stairs. "They're above us," Tyrgen explained, as he grabbed the nearest chain and pulled it toward her. "This will take us to them." The words would have sounded much better if there weren't a sharp hook dangling from the end that was bigger than Sophie's head. She tried to hold still as Tyrgen looped the chain twice around her ankles, but when he latched the hook through the link in the chain, She fidgeted enough to lose her balance. "Easy," Tiergan said, catching her before she could collapse. "This won't hurt, I promise. The chain will absorb all the force." Actually, Sophie was much more concerned about the low, and very solid, jeweled ceiling. She'd jumped into whirlpools and launched out of the ocean in a giant bubble and sunk into the middle of the earth through a choking patch of quicksand. Still, she couldn't help worrying this would be the one thing that was simply too impossible to survive. "Pull the chain 3 times, Tiergan told her, stepping out of the way. Part of her was tempted to stand there forever, but the brave part of her, or perhaps the part that was troublingly insane, wrapped her fingers around the chain and tugged. The world flipped, and her stomach launched into her throat as she passed through something that felt like frozen mashed potatoes. She hadn't even had the chance to scream before she was dangling like a piñata in the center of a bright room with purple walls and a purple floor and lots of staring faces in identical fireproof clothes. "The girl of the hour arrives," Alden said, grabbing Sophie's shoulders to stop her from swaying. "You okay?" "Fine. Yeah, I'm fine. Though, next time, I'd prefer a tower with stairs." He smiled. "One somersault will have you back on your feet. Just make sure you flip forward, not backward." Gymnastics of any kind had never been Sophie's strong suit, so she was grateful when she could blame her red cheeks on the head rush as she twisted and squirmed and eventually flipped in a lopsided tumble to freedom. Seconds later, Tiergan launched through the floor in a shower of amethyst glitter. Sophie watched him somersault effortlessly to his feet, wondering how the ground could feel so solid. But she wasn't about to ask, not in front of an entire council, and Fitz, and Alden, and... "Where's Fenton?" Sophie asked, trying not to sound too relieved when she didn't have to face him yet. Counselor Emery pointed to the ceiling, which, once again, looked incredibly solid. The dark-skinned counselor generally radiated calming confidence, but his deep voice hid the slightest hint of a tremble as he told her, "He is being kept in absolute zero conditions until you are prepared to face him." "The cold won't kill him?" Fitz asked, taking the question right out of Sophie's mouth. Bronte snorted. "That would be pointless, wouldn't it?" "What Bronte means," Counselor Kenrick jumped in, "is that pyrokinetics generally have a much higher amount of body heat, and Counselor Tarek has been checking on Fenton regularly to make sure he's still conscious, or as conscious as he's capable of being, given his current mental state." Several of the other counselors fidgeted at his words. Sophie didn't understand their discomfort, until she remembered that Fenton had been a member of the council before pyrokinesis became a forbidden ability. "Perhaps we should get started," Counselor Tarek suggested. "We'll all feel much better once this is over, right?" "Yes," Counselor Emery agreed, turning to Sophie and Fitz. "Only Alden, Tiergan, and Counselors Tarek, Kenrick, and Orally will go up with you. The rest will stay down here with me, and I'll transmit updates from them from Kenrick." "I still don't understand why Tarek is going instead of me," Bronte grumbled. "Need I remind you that this process involves inflicting?" "And need I remind you that you have shown your weakness?" Kenrick asked him, glancing at Sophie in a way that made her wonder if he was referring to what happened during their session. "Besides, Sophie needs to feel safe and comfortable. 2 sentiments you certainly don't let her experience when you are around." "I've done nothing to—" Bronte started, but Counselor Emery held up his hand. "There will be no further debate on this matter." He waited until Bronte stepped back, before he added, "As I was saying, the 7 of you will go up to the top floor and begin the healing immediately. Sophie, you and Fitz will stand on either side of Fenton, and Orally will stand behind you to track your emotions. Alden, Kenrick, and Tiergan will monitor the situation telepathically, and Tarek will be descrying Fenton, searching his potential for warning signs. I feel this arrangement will be the strongest way to ensure your safety, but if you have any concerns, now is the time to address them." Sophie had many concerns, but nothing was going to fix that. So she went with the only other thing on her mind. "Counselor Kenrick's a telepath?" "Did I never mention?" Kenrick asked with a grin. "That's why I was part of your original committee of 3. They wanted an empath to get a reading on who you were as a person, a telepath to judge your capabilities, and Counselor Grumpy Pants because, well, he insisted. The mood was far too tense for anyone to actually laugh, but Sophie did notice a plethora of smiles. Bronte threw up his hands. "Don't we have a healing to perform?" "Yes, I suppose Bronte is right," Counselor Emery murmured. "Sophie, do you need a minute to prepare yourself?" "I do," Fitz jumped in before she could answer. His face flamed as all eyes turned to him. It'll be quick, I promise." Sophie opened her mind to his and found his thoughts on auto-repeat of the code words they'd created. Alden means there's no reason to worry. Malamelt means she found something. Damelina means trouble. The Verminion means run away. Everblaze means brain push. "Was there something you needed to talk about?" she asked. "I don't know. I'm just starting to get why you're always saying this stuff is so scary. I mean, look at this place. I remember reading about this in Elven history. The whole tower is a trap designed to make people go insane." "It's pretty creepy," Sophie agreed. When he went back to repeating the code words again, he added, "Fitz, if you don't want to do this, I'm sure Tiergan can step in." "No, I'm fine. I'm sorry. I'm scared I'm going to mess something up." "It's going to be okay," Sophie promised, ordering herself to believe it. "Remember, I have a perfect track record with healings." Fitz glanced at his father, who was strong and healthy and very much healed. "Yeah, you're right. Let's do this." "I think we're ready," Sophie said, half hoping no one would hear her. But Alden, Tiergan, Kenrick, Orly, and Tarek moved to her side, and the counselors who were staying behind pulled glowing chains out of the ceiling and started wrapping them around everyone's ankles. "From this moment on, I want you both to be in constant communication with each other," Tiergan told Sophie and Fitz. "Hold nothing back. Check in regularly, and above all else, trust." "We will," Fitz promised, taking Sophie's hand. They tangled their fingers together, and Sophie took one deep breath for courage. Then the chains dragged them up, too fast and too sharply and too painfully, into a room so cold it felt like her blood was freezing. Everyone toppled out of their chains, collapsing to the icy ground with a chorus of groans. Sophie pulled her hood over her head as she turned to face a hunched figure in the center of the floor. If she hadn't known who he was, she wouldn't have recognized him. Pale, papery skin covered his withered, shadowed face, which was crusted with grime and ice. Frozen tears clung to his hair and eyelashes, and his lips were cracked and blue. The only sound filling the room was his ragged, raspy grasps for air, each one more a death rattle than the breath. Sophie had spent days questioning the rightness of this healing, but in that moment, she needed to heal him. "You with me?" she transmitted as Fitz backed away from Fenton's crumpled figure. "Yeah, sorry," he thought, forcing himself to move to her side. "What do you need? Just stay close, and don't try to open your mind to his until I tell you it's safe." Orly took her place between them and placed a soft, fragile hand on each of their shoulders. "If I feel too much stress or fear, I will pull you away," Orly explained, her voice too sweet and warm for such a cold, miserable place. But Sophie doubted she would need it. Her mind was ready. Her instincts were ready. All that was left to do was to press her fingers against Fenton's swollen temples and push her mind into his consciousness.